When the meeting closed in, no one noticed the quiet figure who held the secret that could save everything, a young girl, the janitor's daughter, who understood the language no one else in the room could speak. She wasn't at the table. She wasn't even meant to be there. But fate had placed her within earshot of history. Inside the towering boardroom, the CEO sat with unshakable pride, convinced today would be his triumph. Foreign investors filled the room, their expressions unreadable, their every word laced with opportunity and risk. Contracts worth millions were on the line, and one wrong move could reduce his empire to dust. Executives traded nervous glances, whispering behind polished smiles, while the city skyline glared through the glass walls like a silent witness. To the powerful, the moment seemed under control. To the girl in the shadows, it was already slipping away, and soon silence would reveal the truth. The first words fell like stone into water, foreign, precise, and sharp. The investors spoke quickly, their tone urgent, their meaning vital. But in the grand boardroom, every executive froze. The translator's chair sat empty. No one moved. No one spoke. The CEO's smile faltered, the mask of control cracking at its edges. He leaned toward his team, whispering through clenched teeth. "Where is the translator?" Panic flashed in his eyes, though he tried to bury it beneath arrogance. The truth was brutal. He couldn't understand a single word. The investors exchanged glances, their patience thinning. Millions of dollars balanced on every second, and the silence grew heavier with each tick of the clock. Sweat traced the CEO's temple. Around him, his polished executives offered nothing but blank stares. For all their power, all their wealth, they were helpless. In the shadows, the girl listened. Every word, every phrase, every hidden meaning was clear to her. And yet, no one knew. Not yet. The investors' voices grew sharper, their questions pointed, their tone carrying the edge of insult. They had flown across oceans for this meeting, expecting precision and respect. Instead, they were met with silence. The CEO's lips parted, but no words came. His empire, his reputation, everything he had built, teetered on collapse in the span of seconds. Executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding his eyes. One muttered under his breath, another clenched his fists, but none dared to rise. Pride had chained them all. To admit they didn't understand would be weakness. To confess failure would be humiliation. The girl's small hands tightened around the notebook she carried, her heart pounding. She wanted to speak, to step forward. But what right did she have? To them she was invisible, a janitor's daughter, a shadow at the edge of power. And yet, with every word that passed, she knew the truth. The deal was slipping away. In the silence, failure had already begun its march. The CEO forced a smile, his voice stumbling over broken phrases, half-remembered words from a language he had only studied on paper. For a moment, the room held its breath, until the investors frowned, whispering among themselves. Their leader's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening like steel. One slammed a hand on the table. "Are we being mocked?" He snapped, his words sharp, though the CEO couldn't understand them. The tension in the air thickened, choking every executive seated around him. They could feel the million-dollar deal crumbling in front of their eyes, slipping like sand through desperate fingers. The CEO's face drained of color, his empire, his pride, all unraveling before an audience he could not even answer. The silence cut deeper than their laughter. And still, at the corner of the room, the janitor's daughter stood frozen, clutching her notebook, her heart pounding with a truth only she carried. She knew every word. She understood it all. And in this room of power, she alone held the key. Her chest rose and fell as the voices around her sharpened. The investors speaking faster, their tone growing colder with every passing second. She gripped the edges of her notebook until her small knuckles turned white. Every word they spoke burned in her mind, clear, sharp, undeniable. She knew exactly what they demanded. She knew exactly how to answer. But fear chained her. She was only a child, the janitor's daughter, standing in a room of giants. What if they laughed at her? What if they silenced her before she even finished a sentence? Her father's voice echoed in her heart. "Respect is never given to people like us. We have to earn it twice." Her eyes flicked to the CEO. His face was pale, his hands trembling as his empire slipped away. Executives shifted nervously, avoiding his gaze. The weight of failure pressed heavy on the room. And in that moment, The girl's choice burned hotter than fear. Stay silent and watch a kingdom fall, or speak and change everything. The silence shattered with the smallest sound, a girl's voice. Soft at first, almost hesitant, but carrying words the CEO could not. The room froze. Every head turned toward the corner where she stood, clutching her notebook, her eyes wide but burning with quiet courage. One of the executives frowned, whispering harshly, "What is she doing here?" Another sneered, shaking his head, certain this was madness. But the investors, they leaned forward, their anger faltering as her words flowed smooth. Precise, flawless. The CEO blinked in disbelief. His jaw tightened. But he could not stop her, not when her voice carried the very bridge he had been praying for. The foreign words rolled from her tongue like water, carrying respect, clarity, and truth. The leader of the investors sat back slowly, his sharp eyes studying her, curiosity flickering where anger once lived. For the first time since the meeting began, the storm had paused, and the room, filled with power and pride, now listened to a janitor's daughter. At first her voice trembled, but with each word, strength began to rise. She no longer looked at the polished suits or the skeptical stares. Her focus was on the language, the bridge only she could build. Her father had once taught her in quiet evenings, words whispered while he mopped these very floors. Now those lessons became power. The investors leaned in, nodding as her sentences flowed with clarity. Their scowls softened, their anger fading into intrigue. For the first time, they felt respected, understood. One of them even offered the faintest smile. The CEO sat frozen, disbelief etched across his face. This child, this janitor's daughter, was doing what he, with all his wealth and power, could not. Around the table, his executives shifted uncomfortably, pride cracking into shame as they realized who truly controlled the room now. Every phrase she spoke tightened her grip on destiny. Respect was no longer denied her. It was demanded by the very weight of her words. And slowly, the balance of power began to shift. The room belonged to her now. The investors spoke only to the girl, their words flowing toward her with respect they hadn't shown to anyone else. She translated seamlessly, her voice calm, her eyes steady, carrying millions of dollars with every sentence. The CEO tried to interrupt, stammering broken phrases, but the investors dismissed him with a wave. Their attention never left the child. Executives glanced at one another, their confidence unraveling, realizing that the fate of the deal, of their entire company, rested not on their leader, but on the janitor's daughter. With each exchange, she grew bolder. Her small hands moved as she spoke, guiding the conversation like a conductor leading an orchestra. The investors began nodding, their tone softening, their questions shifting toward agreement. Every deal has a turning point, a moment when the tide changes forever. And in this boardroom of power, that moment belonged to a little girl who was never meant to have a voice. The final question hung in the air like thunder. Do we trust this deal? Or walk away forever? The CEO's hands trembled. His executives shifted nervously. Failure loomed, ready to crush everything they had built. But before panic could swallow the room, the janitor's daughter stepped forward. Her voice was steady, her translation flawless, every syllable carrying weight far beyond her years. She explained their vision, their promise, their future, not as an executive, not as a professional, but as someone unshaken by fear. The investors listened, eyes locked on her, nodding slowly as the silence broke into approving murmurs. Then it happened. A single hand extended across the polished table. A signature pen was placed down. The deal, worth millions, was theirs. And it wasn't the CEO nor his board who sealed it. It was a girl who should have been invisible, yet became unforgettable. The room erupted in applause, but the loudest sound was silence, the CEO's silence. His pride had nearly cost them everything. His arrogance had blinded him. And yet the janitor's daughter had done what he could not. Saved the company, secured the deal, and earned respect that no title could ever buy. Slowly, the CEO rose, his polished voice cracking. We owe you everything. But she didn't bask in praise. She simply looked at her father, the janitor standing quietly at the edge of the room, and smiled. For her, victory wasn't in money or power. It was in proving that greatness can come from anywhere. And as the investors left, whispering about the girl who changed everything, one truth burned into the walls of that boardroom. Never underestimate the overlooked, because sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest power. Legends aren't born in titles. They rise in moments like this.